We're back on the SportsMax Zone, turning our focus now to cricket. Now it stumps on the penultimate day of the second test between the West Indies and Sri Lanka at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium in Antigua. Sri Lanka are 29 without loss. They are chasing a target of 377 to win the match. Earlier in the day, Sri Lanka added only 8 to their overnight total to be dismissed for 258, giving the West Indies a first innings advantage of 96 runs. The West Indies in their second innings posted 280 for 4 declared, with captain Craig Brathwaite again top scoring with 85. Brathwaite got support from Kyle Mears 55 and Jason Holder 71 not out. Now Sri Lanka chasing 377 for victory. As we said, scores so far, the West Indies 354 and 280 for 4 declared. Sri Lanka 258 and 29 without loss. Joining us now to recap the day's action, Fazeer Mohammed, all the way from Trinidad and Tobago. Faz, a tight-looking game here, and the West Indies have set the Sri Lankans a target that pretty much resembles the target under similar conditions that the West Indies were set heading into the final day of the first test.
Absolutely. The more things change, the more they remain the same. Except that is reversed 180 degrees because the West Indies then was set 375. Importantly, they lost a wicket to the end of day 4. Sri Lanka, in contrast, have 10 wickets in hand, but their batting is felt to be a bit more vulnerable. But history is on the side of the West Indies because not many teams chase 300 plus on a last day. As I said, it doesn't happen very often. But again, I'm sure the Sri Lankans are going to take it the same way the West Indies did going into that last day. Take it as it goes. But at this stage, you'll have to say advantage West Indies. Yeah,
again for the West Indies, Kemar Roach continuing to be very, very solid on the Antigua strip. What is it about the strip and the conditions there at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium you think, Faz, that Kemar Roach enjoys so much?
I think what is it's a simple thing. Simple issue is that he bowls a consistent line and length. He gets a bit of assistance off the pitch. And indeed, because West Indies would have played a lot of test cricket fairly recently at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium. In fact, 1 year they played a couple of test matches there because of 2 series a few months apart. You would definitely have someone like a Kemar Roach taking a lot of wickets on that ground. He also has a 10-wicket haul against Australia at Queen's Park Oval, which is often considered to be a graveyard for fast bowlers, although so many others like Courtney Walsh and Kirtley Ambrose might tell you otherwise. It's just a matter of doing the basics right. As with any other sport, any other endeavor, if you can excel at doing the basics right, there's a very good chance that you will prosper. And that is the case for Kemar Roach.
Yeah, application key for the West Indies, certainly in their batting responsibilities today. Craig Brathwaite and Jason Holder getting fairly solid half centuries. And Kyle Mears, in his 8 test innings to date, Faz, he has had 6 scores, 40 plus, including, of course, that double century. So he's shaping up to be a kind of a consistent batsman, although you would like to see him, go on and get bigger scores. But he is still building and learning the game, isn't he?
He is very much so. I think he's nailing down that number 4 spot because when you think about it in Nkrumah, never mind his failure, a duck in the first innings, and the disappointment would be that he suffered a bit of a whiplash-type injury that prevented him from batting in the second innings. He seems solid at 3. Kyle Mears solid at 4 for the moment, but there are other places open. But to answer your question about Kyle Mears, and again, remember we raised this a couple of days ago about that hunger, about having to wait so long. We talked about Nkrumah waiting 10 years to play Test cricket after getting a taste of it at the T20 level. Well, similar for Kyle Mears. He's bided his time, and closer to 30 than he is to 20. He's relishing this opportunity.
The highlight reel showed some things about John Campbell's dismissals in this Test series, Fazeer, that ought to cause the young man concern. A highly intelligent guy, well, an intelligent guy from what we know, able to review tapes. These are not the olden days when you didn't quite know what the ball did to get you out. And he keeps getting out the same way. What do the coaches do next with John Campbell, apart from dropping him?
Well, that's up to the selectors. The coaches won't drop him.
Beg your pardon, I meant to say the selectors. Sorry, I meant to say the selectors. Sorry.
Well, I think to be brutal about it, I think John Campbell has played his last test match for a while because he's played 15 test matches, averaging 24. And as you said, the repetitive manner of his dismissals tells us that he has work to do. And if anyone will sympathize with him, it's the coach, Phil Simmons, because he averaged in the 20s in his test career, really stutter-start, interspersed with opportunities to play, then being left out and so on. So it was really a test career interspersed with disappointments. He had 100 at Melbourne against Australia in 1992-93. But Simmons will identify with that challenge. But having said all of that, it's really up to the other openers around the region, or maybe even a Shea Hope, who might be pressing his case to be promoted to the top of the order to get into the team to replace John Campbell. But quite brutally, I think that Campbell has played his last test innings for a while.
There are some who are tempted to say that Bangladesh was fluky. If you looked at Bangladesh and the result and performances in a vacuum. Based on what you've seen so far in the Sri Lanka test series, only one day left in it, is what the boys did in Bangladesh being borne out, or has it been borne out so far in this series to the extent that you would say this is a team on the up, if even by inches?
Yes, you could understand why the Bangladesh situation would have been seen as a fluke, because it was 8 versus 9. Not West Indies at 8 versus number 1 or number 2. So they were beating number 9, but number 9 has been hard to beat in their own conditions for some time. But to answer your specific question, the way the West Indies are performing in this test series, especially batting through the last day of that first test match with Nkrumah bonus 100, and the way they've played this second test match as well, tells you that yes, it's incremental. It's not a huge leap forward as yet, because a deterioration for such a long period of time, it's become a generational decline. And you don't solve that in a series and a half. It takes time. It takes years, 2 years. Maybe it will take us to be talking about it, if we are still around, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, to look back on that Bangladesh series and say that was the turning point. In the same way we talk about 1995, the West Indies losing their unbeaten run at home to Australia.
Yeah, a final thing before we go, Fazeer. As we go face up to the 5th and final day of this test match, the last day of the series, is there anybody who's leading the man of the series race right now in your mind?
It seems wide open to me, and I think it could very well be decided on the last day. Lahiro Tiramana is a prime candidate. He's got 3 half centuries. If he bats beautifully on the last day for a draw or the unlikely prospect of a victory, he could be in contention. You've got Kimar Roach there as well. You've got so many people. Craig Brathwaite is an obvious name as well as captain. Missed out on twin hundreds in this test match, as he missed out as well in Headingley. So I think there are a number of players who could be in contention, and maybe it's good to think that it could come down to a performance on the last day that will tilt that balance.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Fazeer. All the best. We'll talk sometime next week.
Indeed, we will. Take care.
All right, good. Fazeer Mohammed there. All right, so we got a statement at hand that we have to share with you. It concerns the Cricket West Indies presidential election and what the man who was challenging for the post of Cricket West Indies president has said in the past few minutes. Anand Sanasie, the man out of Guyana who was set to challenge Ricky Skerritt for the presidency, he has withdrawn from the race, Anand Sanasie has, and he has issued a statement offering up some reasons for his decision at this time. This news item came through minutes after 2 Caribbean time, announced with great fanfare in the style of by the inimitable Andrew Mason. I'm going to read bits of the statement for you. It says, further to a joint statement issued by myself and Mr. Calvin Hope, and because of a barrage of messages and phone calls, I issue the following statement, I being Anand Sanasie. It says, following recent developments, I, Anand Sanasie, have reassessed my candidacy for the position of President of Cricket West Indies. I remain deeply concerned at the manner in which events unfolded recently, both at the Cricket West Indies level and at the level of the Guyana Cricket Board, GCB. At CWI, there was an attempt to hold an annual general meeting on the presidential and vice presidential elections without critical requirements outlined by the Articles of Association being complied with. This attempt, until it was thwarted at the last minute, Anand Sanasie says, remains cause for serious concern by those who have an interest in good governance at CWI. A major scandal was averted by the judicious and prudent actions of the Barbados Cricket Association and Guyana Cricket Board to save CWI global embarrassment and ridicule. even though I, Anand Sanasie, was personally aware of the likely consequences at my home base, doing the right thing was never a question for me or the GCB. He goes on. Unjust, irregular, and imprudent and hasty actions taken by the partisan and compromised Minister of Sport in Guyana, Mr. Charles Ramson Jr., have led to dubious GCB elections being held and a new group purporting to be the new executive installed. I am advised, Anand Sanasie says, by my legal team that these elections cannot withstand judicial scrutiny which may arise and which have every possibility of prevailing. It should also be noted that the court-ordered Demerara Cricket Board election is very likely to be set aside. It continues. Prior to the GCB elections, Minister Ramson held 3 meetings with the CWI president and a select group of directors, from which the GCB-nominated directors were excluded despite their objection on the one occasion when they were aware of the meeting. The actions of Minister Ramson at all material times were deeply partisan and prejudicial in favor of those who seek control of the GCB for political and personal purposes, and clearly intended to give my opponent an advantage in the CWI elections. The minister's unpatriotic action supported and enabled my opponent, Anand Sanasie says, to undermine my candidacy. Therefore, after deep reflection and consultations with my advisors, I have decided to withdraw my candidacy for presidency of CWI. I will shortly write to the corporate secretary to advise her accordingly. Consequently, I take this opportunity, Sanasie says, to extend congratulations and the best wishes to Mr. Ricky Skerritt, since he will be uncontested. I urge that more deliberate efforts be made to strengthen the finances of Cricket West Indies and to improve in the areas of prudent fiscal management, accountability, and transparency. I also urge that greater respect be accorded to territorial boards and that there is considerably more inclusivity in executive decision-making and corporate governance. I also extend a special thank you to Mr. Hope for his work and dedication to his campaign. Finally, Anand Sanasie says, I personally extend heartfelt thanks to the many persons in government across Guyana, throughout the Caribbean and further afield who supported my candidacy and the team of persons who worked tirelessly behind the scenes on my campaign. I remain in service to cricket, as has been a lifelong dedication, and I will continue to fight against any political control of the Guyana Cricket Board. Yours sincerely, Anand Sanasie. That's the statement.
Well, I have to say, George, that it happened as a result of the Guyana Cricket Board elections. I feel like when he lost the position, then, you know, as he rightfully said, he stood back and he reflected. But I would say if you felt so many things were wrong with Cricket West Indies and the Guyana Cricket Board, why not stay and fight on?
Well, the shocking part of that statement for me is that he said the actions of the Guyana Cricket Board and the Barbados averted embarrassment for Cricket West Indies. I'm not sure how to digest that, because what they did was a huge embarrassment globally to Cricket West Indies.
Break time.